Once again, we're going to look at some more of the final project instructions. This time we're going to look at Excel. Notice that that's one of the 4 documents you're going to be creating. So I'm going to scroll down in the instructions down below Access, which is one of the other videos. And we're going to look at Excel. Excel has quite a few requirements. And similar to Access, we're going to open Excel. You're going to create a blank workbook. That's your blank spreadsheet. And it opens up the blank spreadsheet with the letters for the columns and the numbers for the rows, as always. So we've created the Excel workbook, and we're going to name it with last name final project. We can go do that later. We're going to create a worksheet with a minimum of 5 columns and 7 rows. So we're on sheet number 1. And in this case, we're going to do a budget. As my example, as you recall from if you watched Access first, is going to be about a dream vacation. We're going to create a budget for that dream vacation. So you need to think and maybe even write down on a piece of paper, plan out what you're going to do. You need to have at least 5 columns and at least 7 rows. Mine is going to be a budget, as I said, so we're going to have headings related to the different so in the columns I'm going to leave this first cell blank because I'm going to have the different categories of expenses going down in the column in A. Then on the top of B I'm going to have the days that I'm staying at this vacation spot. Oops. Do have to type it correctly. 1. And then, as I said, the expense is going down. This is a winter ski vacation type location. So we're going to have travel, food, dog sled ride, sleigh ride, ski lift, hotel, so I need to have at least 5 columns of data. So I have 6 here. And I have to have at least 7 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could have more expenses. You can have more than 7. I'm just using the minimums here. And it also tells us we want to have this in Times New Roman
Well, Luigi screaming you want.
So I've now adjusted the titles so that they're all going, the whole area is going to be in Times New Roman 12 point. The column titles need to be bold, and the row headings need to be bold. Oh, it says do not bold, excuse me. Row headings don't need to be bold. But I didn't want to make everything bold because data doesn't need to be bold. One of the things you can see here is that because of the length of my text in column A, it's going to overrun column B, or if I put data in there, it's going to cut off column A. So what I want to do is I want to put my cursor in between these two and double click, and it will automatically lengthen or create a greater width to be the length of the longest text that's in the cell. Then you're going to need to put in the data, and you can do this based on research, personal experience, personal knowledge, or some imagination, depending upon what your topic is. So I'm going to pretend that day 1 is going to be $700 for the travel, and you're not going to have travel again until the last day, and it'll be the same. I'm just splitting it in half. Food, I'm going to budget $100 a day, and you don't have to do it that way. I mean, I'm just picking a number. And what I did there was I copied it into the other cells. The dog sled ride is only going to be a one-time deal, just like all the others are. So dog sled ride, we'll say we're going to do that on the second day, and that's going to cost $200. Sleigh ride we'll do it the first day, that'll cost $150. The ski lift, we're going to do that for several days, and each day it's going to cost $50 for a ski lift ticket. And you can type it in there, but if you're going to do it for multiple cells, you can click on that cell after you've typed it in and left the cell, and put the cursor on the corner where it turns into a black cross, and I can copy the cell across. Hotel, we'll say that we've got a really good bargain here. We're going to get a $150 a night hotel. And it's going to be all the days except the last day, because you're leaving on that day, so there won't be a hotel expense on that day. And on one of these days we'll put a snowmobile rental will be $250. So now I have some data to work with. One of the things you have to do is you have to create formulas. You have to do calculations in the Excel spreadsheet. So the way you do calculations, one of the ways, is to write a formula. So in this cell here, I'm going to have the total and I'm going to write a formula that adds up everything in that row. So I click equals, and I talk about the cell number. I start with the first cell, which is cell B2. I could type that if I wanted to. And then colon B7, or G2, excuse me, G2. And when I hit enter, oops, forgot the formula. I have to tell it I'm going to sum, and then I also have to have this in parentheses. Oh, it stopped. It changed the Something happened there. It was supposed to be to G2. It was before. I don't know why that changed. So you can write this formula. You can just write it in the formula. Just click on the cell, equals, and then whatever the function is you're going to use. In this case, sum. Sum means add. And then parentheses, the first cell, colon, the last cell. Another way to do it, I'm going to have to widen this out because it's not going to... yeah, it wasn't showing it to. There it is. I can highlight all of these cells, including the one with the total, and then I can hit the sum button. And if you're only doing addition, this works perfectly. You just hit sum, and it writes the formula for you. So if I click in this cell, it did the formula for me. It typed in the word sum, it used an equal sign, it put the cells in parentheses, and so forth. Now, I can take a little bit of a shortcut here. I could write each of the formulas all the way down, but if you click on a formula that works, like this one right here, or I could have used the top one, and I click, and remember how I copied the data earlier, I can click and drag this down, and it will write a formula for me that is relative to the cell that it's going to be put into. So it now has a formula in each of these cells. And the ones that are blank, it didn't add anything in there for, obviously. I don't even have to put a 0. I could put zeros, but I don't have to. So now I can also total this for each day. I can get a date that I'll notice that this is the total for all 6 days for travel, for food, etc. Now I can get each daily total by doing the same thing. I can highlight this, hit the sum button, and it writes the formula for me. So this first day, because of the travel, is going to cost $1,100. Now I can, again, highlight this, and it adds that up. Now I can also do it this way and copy this across, just like I copied the other one down. And I can find that my grand total for my week stay at Breckenridge, Colorado ski resort and doing all these different activities is going to be $3,500. Note that it also tells you have to do some other kinds of calculations for min, max, and average functions. So if I'm going to do min, max, and average, I need to decide where I'm going to do those. So I'm going to need to write these formulas because there's no really automated way to do it. I'm going to type a title, in this case, daily minimum. And then I'm going to write a formula. Remember, formulas start with an equal sign. Then I'm going to type min, that's the function minimum, parenthesis, the first cell daily total, and the last cell daily total. Now I could do the minimums and maximums for each day if I wanted to. Let me clear this. And I'll simply do minimums and maximums for each day. And for the first one, I'll have minimum. I'm going to write equals min, and I'm going to highlight the cells. Now, when you're dealing with the raw data like this, you don't want to include the totals. That would be incorrect because your total is always going to be the highest. I'm going to close my parentheses, hit enter, and the minimum entry, remember these are not zeros, they're just non-existent. The minimum entry for daily expenses is 100. Equals max, parenthesis. I'm going to highlight the same cells. The highest entry for that day is 700, maximum entry. Average equals average, parenthesis, and again you highlight the same cells, again not including the total because that would skew your result. So the average of your expenses on that day is 275. Now, one of the things you can do that, repeat that process for each column, or you can highlight all three of these formulas and then do what I showed you earlier about copying it and click and drag it across. And it copies the formulas, but they're relative. For instance, this first one I wrote was about column B. When I copied it all the way down over here, it's now about column G. The relative copying function takes care of that for me. I need to have a title across the top of my worksheet. So I'm going to click on this first row, and I'm going to right click and insert, and it puts a blank column up there. And it wants me to use the merge and center function across all these cells. So I'm going to highlight the cells, and then I'm going to use the merge and center function. Which is this button right here. And now when I type this text, and this is going to be the title of my worksheet, it also wants the title to be 14-point bold. And you need to name the sheet with your name. So I'm going to right click and rename the sheet. Lindo, and I can change the color to the color of my choice. Next, I'm going to create a chart. If I highlight my data, remember, only highlight the data, not the totals. So I highlight my data, but not the totals. And I click Insert, and I'm going to make this a simple column chart. And notice that my chart, because I highlighted my column headings and my row titles, added those to my chart. Now I want to make this its own sheet. Remember, notice it says create a chart on a separate sheet using the data on the main sheet. Name the sheet tab chart. So I'm going to right click on my chart. I'm going to go down to Move Chart. I want it to be a new sheet, and we're supposed to name it Chart. It automatically called it Chart 1. Click OK, and it makes the chart its own page. Now, to be totally correct, you probably want to add the chart title in. It says to add spark lines, so I'm going to do the spark lines here. I'm going to go to this cell, go to Insert, Spark Line. I'm going to make it a little column chart spark line, or you can make it a line chart if you prefer. You need to highlight the data. Again, remember, only one kind of data. In this case, don't include the total of this row, or else it'll skew everything. Click OK, and there's my spark line. I could have done that as a column spark line. And I could copy this up and down. This line chart won't work well with all this blank data in here. It'll just be a dot in some cases, like for that one. So you probably don't want to do it for anything except numbers that are all the way across. The other thing we need to do is this would be marked incorrect, at least some points taken off, if you left it like this. This is just numbers. This is actually supposed to represent values, dollars. So we're going to highlight all of this, and we're going to format it as dollars, or whatever it is you want to format. So I highlight my numbers, and this time I'm going to highlight all of the numbers, including the totals, because I want all my values to be the right format. And then you right-click, format the cells, and in this case I'm going to format it as currency to 2 decimal places. I don't really need that many, they're all full dollar values, but that's what you usually do. Click OK, and everything ends up with the dollar format on there. Note that you can format it if you change the symbol in the format function. You can make it euros, you can make it just about any other currency that you care to select. There are things you can do to dress this up a little bit. You can put borders around some things, underline borders. But that meets all the requirements. So you're going to do File, Save As, I'm going to, and remember that the name of this is supposed to be your last name final project. So this correctly should be called Lindo Final Project.